There's a number sitting quietly inside an industry report that almost nobody outside the metals world has actually read, and it might matter more to your financial future than anything happening on Wall Street this month. It has nothing to do with a stock ticker. It has nothing to do with a headline about the Federal Reserve. It's a number about a shortage, one that's been growing for 6 years in a row, in a market most people only think about when they see a coin or a piece of jewelry. And here's the strange part. Even as that shortage keeps getting worse, the price of the metal at the center of it just went through one of its sharpest corrections in years. Those two facts shouldn't be able to coexist, and yet right now they do. That metal is silver, and the test it's facing over the next few months may end up defining whether this shortage finally forces its way into the price, or whether short-term fear keeps winning a little while longer. Almost nobody watching a daily price chart is thinking about that test in those terms. Most people see a red candle or a green candle and move on with their day. But underneath that single candle sits a genuinely fascinating collision between physical scarcity and financial psychology, and that collision is what this video is actually about. If you're interested in money, investing, gold, silver, and protecting your financial future, subscribe to Money Insights and like this video, because every week we break down the biggest financial stories in simple English, without the jargon and without the hype. Let's start with what's visible on the surface, because that's where most investors stop looking. Silver surged to an all-time high near $121 an ounce earlier in 2026, a stunning move driven by a mix of industrial demand, safe haven buying, and years of tightening supply. Then came the pullback. By mid-July, silver had fallen back into the mid-$50 range, a steep drop from its peak, as rising bond yields, a stronger dollar, and growing expectations of higher interest rates pulled money out of precious metals across the board. For a metal that had just made history, that kind of reversal looked, on the surface, like the story was over. Here's why that matters to you, whether or not you've ever bought a single ounce of silver. Silver isn't just a smaller, cheaper cousin of gold sitting in the same display case at a coin shop. It lives a double life. Half the time it behaves like a monetary metal, moving with fear, inflation expectations, and central bank policy, the same forces that move gold. The other half of the time, it behaves like an industrial commodity, consumed in factories, solar farms, and electronics plants around the world, the same way copper or aluminum gets consumed. That dual identity is exactly why silver's price can look confusing on any given day, and it's exactly why the real story here isn't found in the daily chart at all. Because underneath that price correction, something else has been happening, something that barely made headlines. According to the Silver Institute's World Silver Survey for 2026, the global silver market is heading toward its sixth consecutive year of supply deficit, with a shortfall for 2026 projected at 46.3 million ounces, wider than the 40.3 million ounce gap recorded the year before. Picture that as a warehouse that's been quietly shrinking every single year since 2021, even while the world kept demanding more silver, not less. Since 2021, the cumulative drawdown from global above-ground silver stocks has reached an estimated 762 million ounces. That's not a one-time event. That's a structural pattern, repeating year after year, regardless of what silver's price happens to be doing at any given moment. Now, here's where the investigation gets interesting, because a supply deficit alone doesn't explain why an asset should necessarily go up. Markets can run on stored inventory for a long time before a shortage becomes impossible to ignore. So the real question isn't simply whether a deficit exists, it's whether this particular deficit is temporary, the kind that corrects itself once prices rise enough to attract new production, or whether it's something else entirely, a shortage that keeps widening no matter what the price does. To answer that, it helps to look at history for a moment. Silver has lived through supply and demand imbalances before, most notably during the late 1970s, when the Hunt brothers, a wealthy Texas family, attempted to corner the silver market by accumulating an enormous private stockpile of the metal. Silver prices spiked to then record highs before collapsing sharply once exchange rules changed and margin requirements tightened, forcing a rapid unwind of those positions. That episode is often used as a cautionary tale, a reminder that a sudden concentrated buying spree, even when built on a real scarcity narrative, doesn't automatically mean permanently higher prices, especially when it's driven more by a handful of large buyers than by broad-based structural demand. But the market of the late 1970s and the market of 2026 are not built the same way, and understanding that difference is the key to this entire story. But the market of the late 1970s and the market of 2026 are not built the same way, and understanding that difference is the key to this entire story. The Hunt brothers' squeeze was driven by concentrated speculation, a small number of buyers trying to control supply for financial gain. What's happening now looks almost nothing like that. There's no single dominant buyer trying to corner anything. Instead, the pressure comes from millions of individual decisions happening simultaneously across dozens of industries and countries: solar developers in Europe, electric vehicle manufacturers in Asia, semiconductor fabricators in the United States, all making unrelated purchasing decisions that happen to converge on the same metal. That distinction matters enormously because speculative squeezes tend to unwind quickly once the buying stops. Structural industrial demand doesn't work that way. It doesn't stop simply because a chart looks overextended. Here's the hidden connection almost nobody outside the mining industry ever talks about. Roughly 74% of the world's silver isn't mined because someone went looking for silver. It's mined as a byproduct, pulled out of the ground alongside copper, lead, and zinc operations that exist for entirely different reasons. Picture a copper mine deep underground, machinery running around the clock, extracting ore because global construction and electronics demand copper. Silver simply comes along for the ride, a secondary metal recovered almost as an afterthought. That means when silver's price rises, most producers can't simply respond by digging for more of it. They're not in the silver business. They're in the copper, lead, or zinc business, and their operations respond to those metals' economics, not silver's. This is the detail that changes everything about how this story should be understood. In a normal commodity market, a shortage pushes prices up, higher prices attract new investment, new mines open, and supply eventually catches up with demand. That's the self-correcting mechanism most people assume applies here. But because so much of the world's silver supply is tied to unrelated mining decisions, that self-correcting mechanism barely functions. Even a sustained price signal, industry analysts note, cannot deliver meaningfully more mine supply within less than a decade, since new primary silver projects typically take somewhere between 7 and 15 years to move from discovery to actual production. Global mine output for 2026 is projected at roughly 844 million ounces, essentially flat compared to prior years, even with all of this demand pressure sitting on top of it. So if supply can't easily respond, what's driving demand higher in the first place? This is where the story moves from historical curiosity into something happening in real time, all around the world, mostly out of sight. Industrial demand now accounts for a majority of total silver consumption, and it's being pulled by several forces simultaneously. Solar panel manufacturing uses substantial amounts of silver paste in photovoltaic cells, and global solar installations have continued expanding as countries pursue renewable energy targets. Electric vehicles use more silver per unit than traditional combustion vehicles, largely due to their more extensive electrical systems. And a newer force has entered the picture too: the rapid build-out of artificial intelligence infrastructure, with data centers, advanced semiconductors, and high-performance computing hardware all relying on silver's unmatched electrical conductivity. Picture a factory floor lined with robotic arms assembling solar panels, each one requiring a small but essential amount of silver paste. Picture a server room glowing with rows of processors, humming through an AI training run, every board inside relying on silver-plated connections most people will never see or think about. None of those industries are buying silver because they expect the price to rise. They're buying it because their products cannot function without it. That's a fundamentally different kind of demand than an investor speculating on a price chart, and it does not disappear just because the metal's price corrected sharply in the first half of the year. Here's the part of this story that even many long-time precious metals investors haven't fully absorbed yet. The artificial intelligence build-out happening right now isn't a distant future source of silver demand. It's already underway. Data centers require enormous amounts of wiring, switching equipment, and high conductivity components, and silver remains the single best electrical conductor of any metal on Earth. Better than copper, better than gold, better than anything currently used at industrial scale. As more companies race to build out computing capacity, that demand adds itself on top of an already strained supply chain, one that was struggling to keep pace with solar and electric vehicle demand even before this newest source of consumption fully arrived. Unlike a jewelry trend or a temporary industrial fad, this kind of infrastructure build-out tends to unfold over years, not months, which means its effect on silver's demand side isn't a short-term blip. It's closer to a new floor being poured under the market, quietly, one data center at a time. At the same time, investment demand hasn't disappeared either. Physical investment demand for silver, meaning bars, coins, and similar products purchased by individual investors, is forecast to rise by roughly 18% in 2026, even after the earlier price correction. In parts of Asia, particularly India, tightened import policies have added further pressure to available supply, even as elevated prices have started to cool some retail buying enthusiasm. That creates a genuinely complicated picture, one where investment demand and industrial demand sometimes reinforce each other and sometimes pull in opposite directions, depending on the broader economic mood. Picture the vaults where much of this above-ground silver actually sits, warehouses in London tied to the London Bullion Market Association. storage facilities linked to major exchange-traded funds, and depositories connected to futures exchanges in the United States. For years, those vaults acted like a shock absorber, a buffer that could quietly supply the market whenever mine production fell short of demand. But a shock absorber isn't unlimited. Every year of deficit draws that buffer down a little further, and 6 consecutive years of drawdowns is a very different situation than a single unusual year. At some point, a buffer built over decades can only shrink so much before its ability to soften the next imbalance starts to fade. Nobody can say precisely when that threshold gets reached, but every additional year of deficit moves the market closer to it, not further away. Now let's bring in the piece of this puzzle most casual investors never think to check, because it might be the clearest signal in this entire story. It's called the gold-to-silver ratio, and it simply measures how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. As of late July 2026, that ratio stood at roughly 69-1. For context, the modern 50-year historical average for this ratio typically falls somewhere between 60-1 and 70-1. At 69-1, silver currently sits near the top of that long-term range relative to gold, a level that, historically, has often preceded periods where silver started to outperform gold rather than lag behind it. That's not a guarantee of what happens next. Ratios like this reflect historical tendencies, not certainties. And markets can remain at extreme levels longer than logic might suggest. But it's a data point worth understanding, because it quietly reframes the entire conversation around silver's recent weakness. This is the moment where the bigger pattern starts to come into focus. On one side, you have a structural, multi-year supply deficit that mine supply is essentially incapable of solving quickly, driven by industrial demand from solar, electric vehicles, and now artificial intelligence infrastructure. 3 sectors that are all expanding rather than shrinking. On the other side, you have short-term macroeconomic pressure, a stronger dollar, rising bond yields, and growing expectations that the Federal Reserve may need to raise interest rates to fight inflation that hasn't fully cooled. These 2 forces are not answering the same question. The deficit is a multi-year story about physical scarcity. The price correction is a short-term story about interest rate expectations and investor psychology. Right now, the short-term story is winning. Whether that continues is genuinely uncertain. This brings the story directly to the test. Almost nobody is watching closely enough. On July 28th and 29th, the Federal Open Market Committee will hold its next meeting, with the decision released on the afternoon of July the 29th, followed by a press conference from Fed Chair Kevin Warsh. Unlike some previous meetings, this particular gathering will not include an updated summary of economic projections or fresh dot plot, meaning Warsh's specific choice of words during that press conference becomes the primary signal markets will react to, arguably even more than the rate decision itself. Going into the meeting, market pricing has suggested investors largely expect the Fed to hold rates steady, while expectations for a possible hike later in the year, particularly at the September meeting, have been climbing. Why does a Federal Reserve meeting matter this much to a metal that's fundamentally about factories and supply chains? Because silver's dual identity means it gets pulled by both stories at once. If Warsh signals continued concern about inflation and keeps the door open to a hike in September, higher rates tend to make non-yielding assets like silver less attractive to short-term investors, at least temporarily, even while the underlying physical shortage continues unaffected in the background. If instead the tone leans toward patience, emphasizing cooling data and easing energy pressures, silver could see renewed buying interest from investors rotating back toward precious metals. Either way, the deficit itself doesn't change on July 29th. Only investor psychology does, at least in the short run. Consider both paths for a moment side by side. In one version of the next few months, the Fed leans hawkish, rates stay elevated or rise further, the dollar stays firm, and silver's price struggles even as solar installers and chip makers keep drawing down the same shrinking pool of above-ground metal. In that scenario, the deficit doesn't disappear. It simply gets masked by macro pressure, quietly building tension for whenever that pressure eventually eases. In the other version, cooling inflation data gives Warsh room to sound more patient. Investors start rotating back toward precious metals. Ours, in a market already running 6 years of shortfall, meets renewed buying interest at the same time. Nobody can say today which of those 2 paths the next several months will actually follow, but understanding that both paths lead back to the same underlying deficit, just on different timelines, is exactly the kind of perspective that separates informed investors from people simply reacting to a single day's headline. Let's slow down here and talk about why any of this matters beyond a trading desk. Picture a homeowner installing solar panels on their roof, hoping to lower their electricity bill for the next 20 years, unaware that the very panels being installed depend on a metal running a structural shortage. Picture a factory worker at an electronics plant, assembling components that require silver-plated connections, their job quietly tied to a global supply chain most people never think about. Picture a retiree who bought a small stack of silver coins years ago as a hedge against inflation, watching the price swing wildly and wondering whether that decision still makes sense. Picture 2, a small business owner who runs a local jewelry shop, watching silver's wholesale cost swing by several dollars an ounce within a single week, trying to figure out how to price inventory without either losing money or scaring away customers. Picture a young engineer working at a solar panel manufacturer, reading an internal memo about rising input costs, unaware that the same global deficit driving those costs is also being discussed, in far more technical language, inside bank research departments on the other side of the world. All of these people are connected to the same underlying story, even though none of them are staring at a futures chart. For long-term savers and small investors specifically, this is where balance matters most. Some major financial institutions, including Bank of America and JP Morgan, have published research suggesting silver could see substantially higher prices over the coming years if the structural deficit persists alongside continued industrial demand growth. Those are informed forecasts from serious institutions, not guarantees, and it's worth remembering that similar bullish predictions have, at various points in history, taken much longer to play out than analysts initially expected, or failed to play out entirely once conditions changed. Not every analyst shares that optimism on the same timeline, and that disagreement is worth taking seriously rather than glossing over. Some market strategists argue that silver's investment demand is inherently more fickle than its industrial demand, and that a prolonged period of high interest rates could keep pulling money toward yield-bearing assets regardless of how tight the physical market becomes, potentially delaying any structural breakout for years. Others point out that industrial buyers, unlike investors, don't have the option of simply waiting on the sidelines, since factories can't halt production while hoping for a better entry price, which they argue makes the deficit a more immediate constraint than skeptics assume. Both perspectives rest on reasonable interpretations of the same underlying data, and reasonable, well-informed analysts can and do disagree about how quickly or whether this deficit will meaningfully move silver's price from here. Markets factor in expectations constantly, and a well-known deficit doesn't automatically mean an unpriced opportunity. Here's the reality check this story needs before it ends. A supply deficit is not the same thing as a price prediction. Markets can run on existing above-ground inventory for extended periods, and short-term sentiment, driven by interest rates, currency strength, and geopolitical developments, can override structural fundamentals for months or even years at a time. Nobody watching this video, and nobody making this video, can tell you with certainty what silver's price will do next week, next month, or even next year. Anyone claiming that kind of certainty about a market this complex deserves healthy skepticism, regardless of how confident they sound. What can be said, based on verified data rather than speculation, is this. Silver is currently caught between two very different forces operating on two very different timelines. A physical shortage that's been widening for 6 consecutive years, driven by industries that show no signs of slowing down, sits underneath a short-term price correction driven largely by interest rate expectations tied to a Federal Reserve decision landing on July 29th. One of those forces measures itself in years and decades. The other measures itself in weeks and months. Eventually, one of them tends to dominate the conversation more than the other, and figuring out which one that will be is exactly the test this title refers to. A test that's still unfolding in real time, mostly outside the headlines people scroll past every day. So, to answer the question this video opened with, silver's biggest test isn't a single dramatic price move, and it isn't something that will resolve neatly on any one specific date. It's the ongoing collision between a structural industrial-driven shortage that mine supply is poorly equipped to fix quickly, and a short-term macroeconomic environment shaped by inflation data, a new Fed chair still finding his voice, and a market trying to decide which story to believe first. Almost nobody watching the daily price ticker is thinking about copper mines in South America producing silver as an afterthought, or AI data centers quietly consuming more of the metal every single quarter. But those forces are exactly where this story is actually being written, well before it ever shows up as a single candle on a chart. That's the test that's still ahead, built entirely on verified data and public record, not speculation and not hype. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next.